New England in the autumn, especially when the Red Sox are winning. Hi, this is Jonathan Yates with the Culture of Sports. And for the haters, you're going to have to head down 95 south to the Bronx because the Red Sox eliminated the Yankees last night. But we've been feeling nothing but love here at the University of Massachusetts today for New England sports. And we have 4 athletic directors who are going to tell us why the college programs here are everybody's distinguished as professional teams. I'm going to start with Dr. Christine Kelly here from Dartmouth, who's going to introduce ourselves. And then the others will tell us all about them and their programs, and then we'll start with the questioning. So thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. How's everyone doing?
Great. Good.
Give me more energy. I have tons of energy, so you got to do something here, okay? How's everyone doing? There it is. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, as Jonathan said, my name is Christine Kelly, and I'm the Senior Associate AD for Varsity Sports and SWA at Dartmouth College. I've been there a little less than 3 months. Prior to that, I was the athletic director at Keene State College, which is about an hour south of Dartmouth, and I was there for a little over 2 years. But I'm originally from St. Croix, West Virgin Islands, so that's a little bit about me.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see some familiar faces, our staff and a number of our students here. Ryan Bamford, Director of Athletics here at the University of Massachusetts. Starting my 4th year at the university, and it's a pleasure to have Jonathan and this group here to talk about college athletics. Some exciting things happening at the university. I can say as an opening comment that it's very clear to me that Dartmouth's marketing budget is a little bit bigger than Brown's marketing budget. Sorry, you're counting it down. And then I don't even want to talk about Rhode Island. We just stuck with the helmet here. Happy to host you guys.
Hi everyone, my name is Jack Hayes. I'm the Director of Athletics at Brown, and we're so strong and our tradition is so solid that I can bring a hat and everybody knows about the place. And I don't have to jazz it up with trinkets and ornaments. I've been the Director of Athletics at Brown for 7 years. I was the Director of Athletics at Hofstra University for 8 years prior to that. And excited to be here, and the topic of intercollegiate athletics in New England is something that has been, as a native of Rhode Island and someone who spent most of my career in New England, I was very interested in this topic, and I'm happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Thor Bjorn. I'm the athletic director at the University of Rhode Island, and going into my 12th year there. I can't believe it. But I'm also a very proud graduate of UMass, the undergraduate sport management program, and then also my master's in higher ed administration as well, and was very fortunate to work here for about 14 years. So my wife and I enjoyed coming up through the elevator, which is still the slowest elevator in the history of the world. But we enjoyed coming up and kind of walking through, and it's a pleasure and honor to be back, and look forward to this discussion.
So we're going to, Brian, if it's okay, we're going to start off with you. Without Mr. Bamford, this would not be taking place today. He's the one who helped make this happen. There's about 18 million people in LA. There's less than 1 million people in the Boston area. Yet the Boston area has far more many college teams than the LA area. What's it like running a program with so much competition from so many other outstanding college athletic teams and outstanding athletic directors?
Well, it's a great question. I think to understand the sports landscape and market here, you got to start with the pro sports. And as you referenced, we're proud of the Red Sox and very happy that they're advancing. I think you take note of what's happened in the last 20 years in New England as it relates to the pro sports and the fan that we've created. You know, my generation growing up in New England, we had a lot of losses, right? We remember that, a lot of losses. And then I think anybody that was born in the mid to late 90s that has seen a lot of winning. And what that's done for all of us is it's really been asked of us to raise our games and to really try to create an environment that replicates what people are seeing at pro sports venues, to try to create successful programs, because ultimately we've got success all around us, and if we don't create that, then we're going to be challenged in this environment to have engagement with our fans. And obviously this is the #1 education state in the country, Massachusetts. We take what we do from an academic perspective very seriously, but we also want to add to that sporting culture in the region, and I think that's something that all of us have great pride in as we develop our programs and try to attain a level of achievement that can make not only the people associated with the University of Massachusetts proud, but people in this region proud that we can represent New England and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Well, you know, Ryan, you talk about all those losses as an Orioles fan. You can imagine how you're just breaking my heart. Now, Jack, you're down at Brown University in Rhode Island, where there's 4 D1 schools, and in the entire states of Iowa and Wisconsin, which are Big Ten powers, there's 4 D1 schools like. So what's it being like so competitive in the smallest state in the country?
Yeah, I think it's to our advantage. They are, first of all, they're 4 different schools, they're in different conferences, but where you use that to your benefit is if you need to see a facility project at one of these institutions, they're a half an hour away. Thor and I get together all the time and talk about issues that are on our campus, things that are challenges that maybe one or the other have been through before. And yes, you can pick up the phone and do that with anyone, but there's something to be said when you can do that face to face. There's something to be said when you can go and visit other institutions. We just took a group of trustees to Providence College, who had just maybe 4 years ago had done a $18 million renovation to their rink. So we brought this group right over to Providence College, and we walked through it with their staff, and those types of things I don't think we take for granted. I think we appreciate very much, and we recognize that you can't do that everywhere.
So Thor, has that been your experience with a large public university in Rhode Island?
Yeah, it really has, and I think we are fortunate because as the state university in Rhode Island, we have that as our selling point, and we talk about that a lot when, as Jack alluded to, we have 4 other Division I programs in our state, and in all sincerity, I mean, we're rooting for each other very hard as long as we're not playing each other, because it really is good for the state. Now, there's no team we want to beat more than whoever we're playing on a particular night. But we're fortunate, and I think at the University of Rhode Island is when we're successful. We're the only ones that have the jersey Rhode Island on it. And so we like to market that and to say that it is a little bit unique, but we are representing the entire state, and we hope that with that comes some pride statewide. There's some really big fans of Brown, big fans of Providence College and Bryant, but we'd like to think that maybe when we've had success, especially these last couple of years in men's basketball, that I think people maybe sense that pride throughout the state. So we take that very seriously, and to us it's an incredible opportunity and honor.
So Dr. Kelly, you bring a unique perspective to this question. You're now at Dartmouth College, an Ivy League school, coming from Keene State University, a small public university. Have you noticed sort of a difference in the atmosphere?
Ivy League, Division III. There's a difference. There's a huge difference. One of the big differences, again, coming from New Hampshire, where we are 50th out of 50 states as far as the funding that comes into the state of, to our institutions in New Hampshire. So our entire budget, the appropriation we received from the state of New Hampshire was 8%. So imagine that. So when we talk about the finances already, that's a huge issue that exists there. When you talk about the demographic as far as high school graduates, which is declining in all of New England. By 2032, we're going to be down 14%. So those particular public institutions, as far as Division III is concerned, they're struggling to be able to bring that type of student into the institution. At Dartmouth, that's not necessarily the case, because again, we're an Ivy League institution, we have name recognition, we're highly selective, so as far as enrollment, that's not necessarily a big issue for us. But overall, as far as support, I think sport is sport wherever you go. People are very talented, people are very passionate about sport. Whenever a New England team wins, a pro team, I know it's going to be a great day at work. Because again, people are just that excited. When the Red Sox win, when the Patriots win, people are excited, and it makes the day a lot better. When they don't win, it's not as happy. So overall, I think sport is sport wherever you go.
So Ryan, let's talk about the game day experience. It's very important for creating loyalty among your alumni and the other things. When I taught at the University of Iowa, I taught politics, sports, and the game day experience out there is huge. Iowa City was rated the #1 party school in the country. But that's one reason because of it is you have these traditional in-state rivalries. Iowa, Iowa State, they're the only 2 schools in the state basically. Bama, Auburn, they're the only 2 schools in the state basically. How do you draw here with Massachusetts? You've got UConn down the road, UNH up north, Syracuse to the west, VCU, all the others to the east.
I think obviously we do a lot of work to try to get people to our campus or to get even our students to attend games, and it's vitally important that we create an environment that makes them want to come back. And we try to look at it as fortunate to have lunch today with our sales and fan experience and ticket office folks, and we talked a lot about creating an environment independent of what the result of the game is. We want to create an environment that people want to subscribe to over and over again to try to retain those folks. And for us, it's largely an affinity play for people that either graduated from the university or people in our community that really like UMass and want to see our teams perform well, and at the same time really appreciate what our students are doing, not only in competition but in the classroom and in the community. And for us, we try to play up that story as much as we can to humanize our people. And when they come, again, you know, we've created now in the Mullen Center behind us here, we put in $3 million worth of scoreboards in the last 2 years because we're getting compared to the Garden in Boston. You know, that's the environment we've got to try to replicate if we're going to compete for that, you know, discretionary dollar from somebody that might be in and out of Boston, or somebody that cares about UMass but says, do I want to make a trip out to Amherst to go to a game? And so when they get there, we want to make sure that they have every opportunity to not only feel like they're part of that competitive environment, but also feel like it's a great value for them and maybe their family or friends when they come to the university.
Thor, do you have the same experience with Rhode Island University?
Oh, absolutely. It's, you know, the fan experience is critically important because in my opinion, it is a direct correlation to wins. And you can create an environment that's hard to play in as a visiting team. That's probably worth 8 or 10 points. And so, but it's always a unique challenge. Places like Rhode Island, we have our challenges with resources, so we have to be very specific and efficient with how we spend our dollars. But what we've been trying to do is spend our money on bodies, on smart people that will go out and work their tails off, that can do a lot of grassroots marketing and build up a fan base that has that passion. No different than what Ryan said. You know, it's an affinity-based program. Now we can again be lucky because we're in a small state. You can get from one end of Rhode Island to the other in less than an hour. I remember walking from one end of UMass to the other. It took more than that. So, but you know what? We have that. You know, we have to go out and try to find those people that want to be part of that, and also make sure that we take advantage of the 250,000 alums that are in the area too. That's who our focus is. Now, I think everybody here, and maybe we'll end up talking about it later, but New England fans are difficult. New England fans are great when you're winning and tough when you're losing. Probably because there's a lot of other things to choose from and think about, pro sports or whatever that may be. So when you're winning, you have to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward, that providing a great experience, so that maybe you get a little benefit of the doubt on an off year, because every game is an incredibly huge challenge, and we all know that if all of a sudden the Ryan Center where we play is not 7,500 filled at capacity and only 5,000, our coaches are wondering why. And so sometimes I am too, because we have to pay the bills and tickets in. So we have to support our folks that are out there working their tails off, trying to build that enthusiasm. We have to encourage our coaching staff and players to be part of the community, because again, it's a small community, no different than the community of Amherst, for example. And so it's a lot of hard work, but it's also, I think you can be very visual and see your successes and feel really good about it. And sometimes you just have to be a little bit lucky.
So at Brown University, what's the game day experience like, Jack?
I think what you see at Brown is the name affiliation with who we play really plays a huge part in that. So our Ivy League contests and our games against Providence and URI are most of the time going to be our best attended events. And our situation's a little different. We certainly don't have as many graduates in state as the University of Rhode Island does, or Massachusetts graduates here. Our situation is probably more similar to what you would see in Hanover, New Hampshire. But you have to do the same things. You have to get families to want to come back. You have to make it fun, and you have to find a way to win. Because if you're successful, and sometimes you'll see Ivy League sports where the attendance is not necessarily where it was back in the day. We had a run in 2016 in lacrosse where we went to the Final Four. We had our highest attended event in that stadium. That stadium's 40 years old. We had the second highest first round attendance of the 8 NCAA tournament games. And then when we went to 2 sites before it went to the Final Four, we had the highest attended site when it was down to 8 teams in 2 different 2 different institutions. So the fans are there, but they want to see success. They want to be entertained, and rightly so. So for us, we have to do the same things, but we do recognize that those long-standing relationships within our league and in state against Rhode Island and Providence in all sports do seem to be different than some of the other contests we play.
Dr. Kelly?
If I can just add to what all of my co-panelists are saying, one thing is technology has helped and hurt us in a whole lot of ways. When you have ESPN Plus, when you have all the live streaming and everything that's out there, those fans are now saying, okay, it's cold outside, it's raining. I can still get the same thing by just watching it on, online or on TV. So I think that's the one thing that's kind of hurt us a little bit is just technology. Sometimes we do such a great job with technology and pushing our institutions and our teams out there that people are making the decisions now to stay at home and watch it or on the plane or wherever they are as opposed to coming to our contest. But just like everyone else has said, you've got to make it a fun atmosphere. You've got to be able to pull the community in, have those people within the community that say, hey, we've got to make it to a Dartmouth game. Do you know Dartmouth is playing whoever it is today, Brown or whoever it is, and really just try to push that out there and really use your students. Students now, and I'm not sure about you guys, but every institution I've been at lately, at halftime students leave, and I have no idea why that is. I'm wondering what is happening on campus. I mean, the game could be literally a 0-0 game in soccer, and they're leaving. So you're wondering, okay, what's happening there? What can we do to really be able to keep our students? Because they're some of our biggest fans as well.
So Jack and Thor, you guys brought up rivalries. I want to touch on that for the next 2 questions. When I interviewed Derek Carver, who's the athletic director at Coppin State University, I asked him, what's it like being an athletic director when you know that if your administrators, your coaches, your players doing well, Power 5 team's going to poach them from you? He said that made him proud. He said that's what it was all about. That's what he was training them for. Thor, is that the way you feel as an athletic director of Rhode Island?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think whatever a coach or a staff member or wherever their ultimate goals are, it's my job to provide them the opportunities at Rhode Island that hopefully help them get to their ultimate destination, whatever that may be. I certainly hope it's continues to be at Rhode Island, especially when we're successful. But let's use Dan Hurley as an example. We brought him in 5 years ago, and he helped us build something that was really at the bottom of the league, the bottom of the country, to something that was, the top 15, top 20 program in the country. And when he had an opportunity to go to UConn, and we talked about it, I said, congratulations, and can I drive you to your press conference if that's where you want to be? And, there were other opportunities that he and I talked about, and I said, this is not a good one. If you want my opinion, it's not the right one. It's not a good one. You don't need to do this. And of course, I'll support whatever you want to do, but at the end of the day, it's his choice. But I think I have no problem sharing my thoughts because they ask. But no, people a lot of times will say, we had, I think with Dan, for example, we were like 250 in the RPI to 230 in the RPI we went to the NIT, and right before we went to the NIT, people said, what are you going to do to keep the coach? How about win some games? Let's go win some games first, and then we'll figure that out. But no, I think that's a really good, it's always good to have your coach part of that conversation, in my opinion. If that's where they want to be, then I certainly want to support them, and as I said before, you just want to give them every opportunity to be successful. The last thing any one of us want to do is make a coaching change because we're not successful. That's awful. It's a hard thing to do. It's hard for coaches. It's hard for their families, and it's certainly hard for us that have ever had to be in that position. It's much better if a coach wants to move on because of financial reasons, trying to go home. Maybe they think it's an opportunity to help them win a national championship. We wish them well, and then we like to think that we're in a much better position to hire the next great coach to come in and continue with what they were doing.
How about you, Ryan? You're the only AD here from an FBS school. You saw the head coach at UCF last year. He's out of Nebraska. He went from Western Michigan 2 years ago. He's now in Minnesota. How do you feel about that, looking at your administrators and coaches?
Well, I think anytime your coach leaves for what they perceive to be a better situation, maybe a chance to have more success, maybe be at a Power 5 institution, then I would take pride in that because it means our program's probably in a pretty good place. And it means that I'm now going out and do a head coaching search with a lot of opportunity. People see our job as a chance to come in, win, hopefully we get the right fit, and they want to stay here. And the only thing we can do is make it really hard to leave. And I think if you're, Thor did it really well with Danny Hurley. They invested in that men's basketball program in a way that it made it hard for Coach Hurley to make the decision to go to UConn. 10 years ago, if you'd said that you or I coach is thinking about going to UConn and is waffling on it, I think anybody would have been surprised. Thor did a great job of creating, for Dan, an environment that was invested in, and they have the chance to continue it. And it's about being sustainable. And I think for us, it's, the people are the most important ingredient, the most important resource you have. But there are a lot of people who come into a situation and win, and I take great pride in having our folks win, and if they want to stay, we continue to invest in them. And if they think that there's going to be a situation that's better for them, then I will be the first one to support them in that. And we'll go out and find somebody else who can come in and win right behind them. And I think that's what a good athletic program does.
Jack, you've been very successful in turning around a number of programs at Brown. I mean, how do you feel about thinking, the more successful they are, the more attractive they are to a Power 5?
Yeah, so I referred to that 2016 Final Four run in lacrosse, and after that year, our coach, who was a Brown grad, left to become the head coach at the University of Virginia. And we did everything we could to keep him. I think that there were alums that thought he'd never leave because he was a Brown grad, and trying to, the conversations with them were getting everyone to understand that he's not looking at this as his alma mater. He's looking at this as his career, and he's got to figure out what's in his best interest. And he and I, similar to what Thor just said in his conversation with his men's basketball coach, he and I discussed this throughout the time that he was involved in Virginia. It wasn't a secret. He asked questions. At the end of the day, our program was in much better shape when he left than when he arrived. So it would be hard to hold anything against him. In terms of that happening more often, or if it happens occasionally, it's a far better situation than if jobs are open and those institutions would have no interest in your coach. That is a problem. Replacing coaches for the reasons that both Thor and Ryan mentioned, replacing coaches because you have a good product, you've got a program that's been successful, a coach has chosen to move on, those are much easier and more enjoyable tasks to take on than to make a coaching change, as Thor alluded to, or to recognize that jobs are open and there really isn't any interest in your program or your coach.
Dr. Kelly, from your perspective?
So for me, the way I look at it is, gone are the days or the 20 and 30-year coaches. I think maybe, again, 20 or 30 years ago, 30, 40, 50 years ago, coaches, they would get a job, they would stay there for 20 or 30 years. That's just not the dynamic of college athletics right now. Maybe I've only been in it for 20 years, and these gentlemen have been a little bit longer than I have, but that's my thought process. So coming into Dartmouth 3 months ago, my softball coach came to me and she said, I just want to let you know, there's some jobs that came open, I've been contacted about it, and one of the institutions was Syracuse. And I knew at that moment, within the first 2 weeks of me being on this new job, I'm going to be looking for a softball coach. And that's exactly where we are right now, hoping to be able to name this coach within another day or two. But like I said, the reality is, you want to be able to support people where they are and help them get to where it is they want to go. And my only thought process with that is, leave it better than you found it. So if you came into the program and people are, like the rest of my co-panelists are saying, if people are looking at your coaches, that means you're doing something right. And if you can give us 4 or 5 years, that is awesome. Thank you. I mean, if you stay 20 years, that's awesome too, but you never want a program to become stagnant. You want it to be able where people are actually looking at your coaches, they're looking at your program, and they want to be able to aspire to get to where you are. So hopefully you'll be able to see us win some more Ivy League championships in softball this year with a new coach.
Well, that'd be great. So let's touch on a thing that's just very unique to New England when it comes to rivalries. Both my parents are from the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia, and when Washington and Lee, a little private school in Lexington, Virginia, plays Hampton City, their rival, another little private school in Virginia, no one cares. When Williams plays Amherst, and Amherst up here, it is a huge thing. They're both 4-0, and Williams was rated as having the most loyal alumni by about Forbes magazine. So you're not just dealing with the, Bam at Auburn, you're also dealing with the Bates Bowdoin, the Williams Amherst. So Ryan, that fits right into your fan base. What's it doing like when you've got these great little private schools like Williams and Amherst, Bates Bowdoin that have just very loyal fan bases too?
Well, I think it's something we're trying to create at the University of Massachusetts with, not only our colleagues in the A10 and some of the rivalries we've been able to build, Rhode Island being one. I think this day and age, the really true, tried and true rivalries, and I was fortunate to be part of the Yale-Harvard rivalry in my 9 years at Yale, and I will tell you that when we beat Harvard in 2006 and won the Ivy League football title, people associated with Yale were more happy, more enthused that we beat Harvard than we won the Ivy League title. And that told me everything I needed to know about the rivalry. And the same thing, Georgia Tech, and being part of that for 4 years. Here, I think it's something that you can rally your fan base around and rally your students around. Any opportunity to rally the people that are closest to your program is a great opportunity. And we almost try to create rivalries. Maybe it's just because we've been really good in the sport, and so has another school, and that creates a rivalry. I think those are good things for sporting culture in general. And I think that brings the best out in our young people, and I think it brings the best out in our fans, and it creates opportunities for us to try to engage people on a deeper level.
So Dr. Kelly, coming from your experience at Keene State, how did you fight back against those little local rivalries? Amherst Williams is not that far down from 91 from you, that's for sure.
So even before we can talk about Keene State, most people know Harry Sheehy, who's my athletic director at Dartmouth. He's a Williams grad. Every meeting he talks about Williams. Well, my direct supervisor, Brian Austin, he is an Amherst guy. So can you imagine what those meetings are? Every day there's a conversation about Williams and Amherst. So trust me, even at the administrative level, it happens there. But at Keene State, I would say our biggest rival obviously was Plymouth State within the state of New Hampshire. I mean, there's the Plymouth versus Keene game. There's the Red Bull. There's all these different things that happens there. So we try to, again, as Ryan said, you want to be able to engage your students. Anything to be able to create a wonderful game day atmosphere for your students is what you want to do as far as rivalries are concerned. As long as there's good, healthy competition and good, healthy rivalries. Sometimes we've seen it with Bama and Auburn. Sometimes it gets to be a little bit more than it needs to be, but for the most part, I think it's an awesome experience, and rivalries is part of what college athletics is.
So Jack, how do you keep the focus on the Brown games when you've got Williams Amherst, Bates Bowdoin, Trinity Wesleyan so close by?
So those really don't, they're really not in our backyard, and we don't have that kind of rivalry really at the Division III level in Rhode Island. So for us, we've got to capitalize on the ones that we have. Those league, as I said earlier, those league contests and the games with URI and Providence, those games do take on a different feel for us. And yes, it's about how successful you are and as many different things that you can do to engage people. But there's no question that if you were in one of our venues during that game and you looked at the crowd size, you would know that we're either playing one of those 7 or we're playing Providence or URI.
So Jack, are you able to do the same thing with private school rivalries down your way at URI?
Yeah, like Jack said, it really isn't an issue for us. It just hasn't been. I think, we end up focusing on our own backyard, and that works out fine. That's been challenging enough. Our biggest competition is probably the other Division I programs, and probably one of the Patriots playing on a Sunday, so we know we can schedule it so we don't start at 1 o'clock if they're playing at 1. That's a much bigger challenge for us.
So I thought, let's move on to the cultural advantages of being an athletic director in New England. A good friend of mine does recruiting for VCU baseball. He said he loves to get his pitchers from New England because they don't have tired arms. They have not been able to throw you around like the kids in Florida, Arizona. What are the cultural advantages of there being an athletic director or coach in New England?
I think the close proximity we have to so many other Division I programs. We're very fortunate. So for a program like, we have 18 sports at URI, so our baseball teams, our track teams, our tennis teams, they can get on a bus and go compete and almost do their entire schedule as a bus schedule. That helps us budgetarily, and it allows them to still play great competition. So there's tremendous opportunities competitively within New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Mass, New Hampshire, up into Maine. So we're very fortunate with that. I think going back to professionally though, where I love my role and position in New England is the fact that I have so many great relationships and friendships with other ADs that I can call and sit down and talk with face to face if there's an issue or a challenge that you just can't do on the phone. You know, Jack talked about that before, but we get together probably 4 or 5 times a year at least to grab breakfast, and it's absolute therapy for me. And I only have to buy breakfast every other time. And so, but you know,
each one of those, we sit down, the first line is, "You're not going to believe what happened in my school."
Hey, so Jack,
that is true.
Jack, you have a tremendous cultural advantage. There was an article in the New York Times about how rich Asian parents were spending millions of dollars a year to be able to get their kids into Ivy League schools like Brown University. How do you maximize that advantage into recruiting?
Well, at the end of the day, we're trying to find the best students and the best athletes we can. And we're fortunate that, that the name recognition of both the school and the league is very strong, so that we can go into other parts of the country and that name recognition is to our benefit. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of options for students, and we need to make sure that what we are providing to them, or that we articulate to them that we will provide, is a tremendous academic and athletic experience, a great balance, and the opportunity. And the other thing that's important that we have to make sure that we put into those discussions is the opportunity to compete against strong programs outside our league. We have students that have options and they can go to other institutions and they can play in other leagues. If they're going to come to the Ivy League, they want to know who are our non-conference games going to be against. And the better that we can demonstrate that those schedules are strong and their opportunities athletically will be great, the better chance that we have to get them. And those rivalries or those non-conference games, for us, it's going to be different from sport to sport. But in lacrosse, we have a great rivalry with the University of Massachusetts. And we need to show lacrosse recruit that we're going to continue to play UMass, that we're going to play ACC schools. Those things make a difference in how we recruit.
So Dr. Kelly, you've seen these cultural advantages at several schools in New England now. How do you use them to help you recruit?
Well, particularly with Dartmouth, I mean, and I think Jack alluded to it, when you talk about the Ivy League, the name in itself sells itself, so that makes it a lot easier. But the one thing I know Jack didn't say was there's this lovely acronym called HYP. Does everybody know what HYP is? Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, exactly. And you hear about that all the time. So we're in Hanover, New Hampshire. We're not in a big city. We are a rural, town in New Hampshire. So for us, the biggest challenge is just getting people to the campus because they think New Hampshire. I think when I was applying for the job at Key State, I didn't even know where New Hampshire was on the map. Quite honestly, I'm from the Virgin Islands, so the furthest we think in our mind was New York or Boston, not even Mass. You think of Boston as a state, honestly, seriously, growing up in the Virgin Islands. But
That must have been a great first winter in New Hampshire.
it wasn't bad. Last year was a little long. We kind of went from winter to summer. There was no spring in there at all. But I would say definitely as far as the recruiting is concerned, we have to sell what our campus provides. And we always tell our student athletes or potential student athletes, this is not a 4-year decision, this is a 40-year decision. When you leave with a Dartmouth degree, you can put your degree against anyone else in the nation and you're going to continue to be successful. You're also going to be able to compete at the highest level in Division I. So you're going to travel, you're going to have those out of conference competitions. We're going to ensure that you have a great experience. And we also have what's called the D plan, which is a flexible plan that allows our students to take terms off because we're in a quota system. So when everyone's competing for internships in the summer, we have student athletes who are gone. Right now we have 13 softball players who aren't on campus, but they're out doing internships, they're doing study abroad. So we're able to sell that entire experience from an academic, athletic, as well as a holistic development experience for our students. So that's what we do from a recruiting perspective at Dartmouth.
So Ryan, how do you use the cultural advantages of being an FBS school with a great academic institution?
Well, one of the advantages we've had, and I think it's really been pronounced as we rise as a public research university into just outside the top 25 now. About 5-6 years ago, we were in the 50s, and now we're 26 in the country. But one of the advantages we have, and are now seeing that we can compete against Dartmouth and Brown for student athletes because of our Commonwealth Honors College. And what that does, especially for an in-state student who the value proposition of being at the University of Massachusetts and the in-state tuition and having a Commonwealth Honors College experience versus going to an Ivy League institution where it may be north of $60,000 a year, and they may not be getting a lot of financial aid or some. That's a great value proposition for us. We sell that in our athletics department. And the fact that you can come to our institution and with 117 majors, we'll prepare you for life after the University of Massachusetts. And we'll prepare you whatever community you settle in that you're going to have success. And every student that comes in thinks that they're going to end up going pro in the sport that they're in. I don't care what it is, they're going to play for as long as they want to play. And I said, I got news for you, it ends. It ends. It ended for all of us, and it'll end for you. And are you ready for that when it does happen? And that's, for us, that's a really good selling point. The university, the environment that we can create here for academic success, student success, is something that we really try to tout, and it helps us in the recruiting process. Just like it did at every institution I've been in, and referencing the HYP, we used to say, they used to say, I'm looking at Dartmouth, I'm looking at Brown, and we would say, hey, I guess they are still in our league. I guess they are still in our league. That was, we knew it was a challenge with Harvard, Princeton, but no, we had great relationships. One of the things I appreciate about the Ivy League is the collegiality in that league. The ability for all those 8 institutions to see the power in the league, in the conference, and how much that made them visible, how they use that to their advantage to recruit students as a whole, but especially in athletics. I think it's one of the most unique propositions there is in college athletics. It's a special place.
Since pretty much all of us up here have an Ivy League background, let's focus the next question on that. The football coach at Princeton said, do you think it would be a great idea if Ivy League schools started playing historically black colleges and universities in bowl games? Dr. Kelly, what do you think of that? I think it would be fantastic for both programs. I think the Ivy Leagues do need to take a start playing in the big time and get serious with bowl games. What do you think now being in Dartmouth?
Well, for me, I'm also a graduate of a historically black college or university. I've worked at a couple of them, so my experiences and my thought process are probably a lot different than others. I mean, I am the only person at Dartmouth right now who has an HBCU background, so I bring a totally different perspective to the table than some of our other folks there. I think it's great anytime there's exposure to realize there is a world outside of the Ivy League. There are other people that, where those types of conferences can have that type of, not necessarily rivalry, but at least just pretty good competition. I think there are institutions that would be great for exposure for both schools or both leagues, so to speak. So if you have the SWAC, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, you have Grambling State University, which is sometimes the home of black college black college football that exists. If you use that and really market that, it helps those institutions. I think HBCUs have a place in this world. They educated people when African Americans didn't have a place to go. And I think those types of rivalries or competitions would extraordinarily help those institutions as well.
So Jack, you're an athletic director at an Ivy League school. So what would it be like taking that private jet to play New Year's Eve at a bowl game?
Here's how I would look at it. Now, I wouldn't look at it necessarily as what's that opportunity like to do in football. I think to follow on that last comment, it would really be about, across the board in all sports, we ought to play schools where it makes sense. And sometimes it makes sense for financial reasons, sometimes it makes sense for competitive reasons, sometimes it makes sense just to do the right thing. I think more often, and it happens across the country, where you watch schools that won't play each other. And you ask yourself, now, it's not always fair to ask yourself why, because you're not in their shoes and you don't know their situation. But more often than not, I think you should play schools where it makes sense. This is one of the things that in New England you see that does happen. Rarely do you find schools that don't play each other, or schools that will just stay away from certain conferences. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. It's a benefit to being in a school in New England. And if there was something that an Ivy League institution could do, or the league could do as a whole, to be supportive of another group of colleges, we should do it. Now, I'm not looking at that as postseason play or A bowl game, I'm really looking at it as we should do that on a regular season basis.
Brian, based on your experience at Yale, what do you think of the opportunity to play in bowl games for an Ivy League?
You know, I would say this, that the Ivy League, I really got a kind of a knock for not being progressive in their, postseason opportunities. And Jack's been at Brown now, and they've passed some things just as a league where now they have postseason in men's and women's basketball, men's and women's lacrosse, soccer's too.
Just four. Right?
Okay, so right now, and that, I can tell you when I left Yale in 2011, I didn't think that was going to happen for a long time, especially the basketball. 14 playoff. They play 10 games, they don't go to postseason. I think that would be the next logical step from a football standpoint is, do they want to get into the FCS playoffs where I think Ivy League institutions would have some success. But they're all obviously making decisions based on their academic model, their academic calendars, all of those things. Certainly understand that, but the progression that they've had just in the last 10 years has been, I think, a good thing for the student athletes. They enjoy the championship experience from what I can gather. And, I think as you see in college athletics, if things aren't evolving, then, you're not necessarily in the Ivy League getting left behind, but you have to consider reinventing yourself and making sure that the model that you have works for your students. If it works for your student athletes, then it's a good one.
So Thor, what are your thoughts on Ivy League schools playing ball games, Thor?
It's really hard for me to say because I've never been part of an Ivy League program, and I know there's different philosophical reasons as to why they make those decisions postseason-wise. So as others have said, I think anytime there's an opportunity to participate in playing, I'm a big fan of it, but until I sit in those rooms and understand the rationale that goes behind those decisions, I just don't think it's really my place to have an opinion on it.
So we've talked about the regional aspects of your job and the institutional aspects. Let's start talking about the individual features each one of you brings. When I interviewed Heather Light, the athletic director for the University of Pittsburgh, for my show afterwards, what's your favorite part of the job? And she said to take somebody's child who's a teenager and help them develop over the next 40 years into being a young adult. Ryan, what's your best part of being an athletic director here?
I think just being around young people every day. It keeps me young, it keeps me engaged. I think watching our young people be successful, the best day that we have at the University of Massachusetts, and we won 6 championships last year, and none of those days compare to the day of graduation when we had our senior athlete reception. And I got to talk with our student athletes who were graduating and their families and friends who are there supporting them. That degree for them will do so many powerful things in their life. And I told them to remember the people that helped them get there, remember the people that were around them, because I was a college student athlete. I don't remember wins and losses 20 years later like I remember the people I did it with and the people who helped me. And that's a powerful thing around sport. And for us, I think that's something that really resonates, being around the young people. I know our staff, when you're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and if you're in this business, you're not thinking about money, you're not thinking about all the fame, all those things. You're thinking about how can I impact somebody in a way that develops them so that they go out and they have an enriched life. And if we do that, and you do that well, then it's going to make your job and your career and your life that much better. And that's how I look at it.
So Thor, what's the best part of your job down at the University of Rhode Island?
I 100% agree with Brian. I mean, it's having some level of impact on a student athlete that hopefully allows them to have a better, certainly experience during those 4 years, but then I hope great success in life. I think as I go back and think about some unique yet very special, I will never forget moments. A couple of years ago, I had 2 different sets of student athletes. One was a baseball player, one was a women's soccer player, one was a track athlete, and the other one was a football player. And they both asked me to officiate their weddings. And that, to me, was powerful. It was like, wow. First of all, it was incredibly humbling. And secondly, it was like, maybe what we're doing here at Rhode Island is working. Maybe we're impacting people in a way that they look back, and we talk about family all the time, and don't just, it's easy, and we all know this, and people out there know this. It's easy to just throw words out there, but until we start acting the words that we're putting out there, it doesn't mean anything. So when we talk about family all the time, and then try to live it, and sometimes it's dysfunctional, But you try to live that family life, environment, and when things like that happen, I like to think that maybe it's working.
So Dr. Kelly, is it staying the same for you at Keene State now at Dartmouth, the most important part of the job too?
Oh, absolutely. For me, it's about ensuring that you make a difference. And how do you know that you're making a difference? I'll give you just a quick story. So I'm a firm believer in not necessarily making your presence known, but making your absence felt. And I went back to Keene State a couple months ago just to show up at a soccer game and say hi. And the number of student athletes who came up to me and said, "We miss you, Dr. Kelly, we miss you." You know, that in itself for me let me know that sometimes when I had to make those hard decisions, that they understood, they appreciated it, and I was making a difference. So regardless where you go, whether it's Dartmouth, whether it's Keene State, whether it's an HBC, or wherever I've been in my career, it's about making a difference. I know at Dartmouth, being the first African American on the senior administrative team, that's making a difference in itself. To say, here's what your student athlete population looks like, the decision-making team should reflect that as well. So I give all credit to Harry Sheehy for realizing, hey, he may not know, ethnic minority women that are out there, but he reached out to people who did, and hence I'm ending up now at Dartmouth College, and I know I can make a difference for those student athletes to say, hey, maybe there is some diversity, there is some understanding, some inclusion, and for me, that's been the big part of the job, is just making a difference however I can.
So at Brown University, Jack, you're one of the most affluent schools in the world. Are you still able to have that passion and that impact on the individual student athlete's life?
I hope so. I think I think everyone on our staff does and takes that seriously. I think, what's very interesting about this field that we're in is you can spend the day in conversations with alumni and friends of the institution, staff members, and then students. And you could do that in a period of 2 hours. You could be engaged in conversations about how do we make our programs better with people that are fully invested in it, but come from different angles. The people that went to the school and are supportive, those that work at the institution, and then those that are wearing brown across their jersey every day. And our responsibility is to try to make that experience as positive as possible, and we need everybody's help to do it. So that's probably a part of the business that I like it all, but I really like that, and I don't think when you come in at the beginning, that's what it's going to be like. I think early on when you want to get in this business, or at least for me, you're looking at games on TV, you're looking at stadiums and arenas that are filled, you're thinking about your own experience as a student athlete. And then as you go on, you find out really there's things that are far more impactful. Like, what is your relationship with the actual students? How can you work with a group like the Student Athlete Advisory Committee and get their input on things that you want to do? How do you involve and engage alums? How do you continue to motivate your staff? All those things are critical pieces in how you advance an athletic program, and I think are actually the fun things that take place during the day.
So Jack, I'd like to stay on the topic of input from student athletes for a second that you just mentioned. When I taught at the University of Iowa, I interviewed Gary Bartlett, the athletic director there. He's a great guy with a wonderful program. And I told him the way I knew he had a fantastic program was I had 3 varsity athletes in my class. And the only complaint they had about the University of Iowa was that guacamole was not chunky enough. And so what told you that they...
Our guacamole is very, very good.
Well, I'm at your place.
Again, it's very good.
So what told you that you were doing a great job? What sort of one...
Well, nobody told me that yet. Ford told me. I think back that in my experience as a student athlete, I knew mine was a little different because I wanted to get into this field early, and I had a connection, a family friend who was very influential in this field. So when I was a student, I knew all the people in the athletic department, and this was before schools had student athlete advisory committees, and I want the students at Brown to be able to have that connection with me that I have with the people in the department at Providence College. But that takes work. You have to go find those students. They're not going to roll into your office. And when they do, at least the first time, they think they're coming to the principal's office. And part of this business really is to get them to understand that you're bringing them in because you need their input, or you want to know what they think of a certain situation, or you need to know more students on their team. And early on when they come in, sometimes the first question would be, did I do something wrong? I don't know. Tell me, did you do something wrong? By the time, after those first few times, it's very easy to send a text message to a student and have them pop by and have a conversation with them. And early on, I'm old school. I began to wonder, like, all right, should I have those students' cell phone numbers? Should I be texting a student? You have to. If you want to get in touch with them, you have to. And working through them to then get, we have 930 student athletes. So to try to work through that whole group, you really need to find a group like the student, I have found, like the Student Athlete Advisory Committee, and get to know those people, and then get them to help you meet and be as visible as possible. Not to just show your presence, but the more visible you are, I think there's a better chance they're going to come to you when they need your help.
So Thor, when have been your chunky guacamole moments at Rhode Island where you knew you were doing a great job by the unintended feedback?
That's a great question. I guess it's when, for me, it's funny. I don't know, that's a really good question. I think part of us is we're never, I'll speak for myself, never satisfied. We want to be able to do more and more and more, and I don't think we're there yet. We're not providing all the resources we want to yet for our students to be successful. That said, where I had my, what did you call it? Chunky guacamole moment. I think these last 2 years, I'm going to get a t-shirt made up with chunky guacamole. These last 2 years, making my year-end presentation to our faculty senate was where I think I had my moment. It had to do a little bit with that athletic success, but a tiny bit. It had to do with talking about the 63 different majors that our 480 student athletes were majoring in. It had to do with taking their GPA from a 2.9 to a 3.1 overall. It had to do with our Dean's List students being at 59% of our athletic department student body, where it had been 35 before. So it was a lot of these academic successes, and sitting around looking at the faculty senate and saying, seeing pride, because I don't think they knew all that. They didn't understand that these students are coming here, as Ryan said before. I know they all want to come here and be pros, but they're coming here to be students, and they're coming here to have careers in real life jobs after this is all said and done. And so I think as a university, the progress the University of Rhode Island is making in terms of their academic profile has gone through the roof. And I think it's our obligation in athletics to do the same, and I'm very proud that we've been able to do that.
So Dr. Kelly, what have been your moments along the way when you realized it's working for the student athletes?
So I told you the story about coming back to Keene State and what the student athletes said. I will say at Dartmouth, in my short 3 months there, I had to do a presentation at our first all-staff meeting, and I walked in and I was being introduced to do what I had to do, and the room started applauding. And I'm thinking, wow, I've been here literally 2 or 3 weeks, and that for me, and what I was told was, your personality, you're engaging, you're always, you're saying hi. I had our women's soccer team to say to me, we're huge fans of yours. So I'm a former SID, so I do a lot of social media. So apparently student athletes really like that. But I think, again, when you see that student athlete walk across the stage, when you know you've had to make a hard decision and they understand the decision you made. They may not understand it in the moment, but if they can come back a year or hopefully a couple weeks later and say they get it, they understand the decision that you made, and I can go home at night and lay my head down and know I've done everything I can do and I live with integrity. I think for me, that's the best part of all of this. I'm passionate about college athletics. I read something about college athletics every day. I'm a student of this sport, of this business, and I think for the young people who are out here, understand, I know this is a now moment for you. You want it now. You want to be able to, you wrote your goals and you want to be an AD in 5 years and you just graduated last year. Take your time. Learn about where you are. It's not about your title. Take that information. If you can volunteer for somewhere, being here today is a big step. And I just, I definitely want to just acknowledge the students who are in this room. I just had to put that out there.
So Ryan, I saved this for you for the last question, since you're playing for the home team crowds. When did you realize things were working here? You're chunky guacamole.
I think when your students have gratitude for the things that you do and your staff does, and they thank your staff, and they thank, there's a number of hours that go into us building a good student experience, and ultimately, again, watching them graduate, when their parents, when their family and friends say thank you, that's ultimately a really rewarding moment for us as a department. And I think just giving not only your students, but your coaches and your staff the tools to be successful, and when it works, and when you continue to invest in it, there's nothing better than that to me. And that's we've been able to have a little bit of that, and I'm hoping we can continue it and have some more in the near future.
Okay. So we're down to the last two questions. This is going to be about personal style as an athletic director and how you came about becoming an athletic director. Chris Del Conte, the athletic director of the University of Texas, in his press conference when he was accepting the job, he said, "I'm a crier. I cry when we win, I cry when we lose. I'm crying at this press conference now." Jack, are you a crier? What's your personal style?
I am not a crier. I like to be visible. I like to be visible at events and meet with as many students as possible. I like to walk the halls of our buildings. I think one thing that's changed about our business probably in the last 30 or 40 years is that 40 years ago, I bet the whole athletic department was housed in one facility. And it was very easy to see everybody every day. Now you have to work at it. You have to get to other buildings, you have to go see people, and you want to make your own office or building that you're in as accessible and as inviting as possible. So I like to get out and about and see as many people throughout the day as I can.
So I'm going to follow up with the second question for you. When did you decide you wanted to be an athletic director? And second of all, do you notice more and more students nowadays coming to you and saying, "Mr. Hayes, how do I follow your footsteps in college sports administration?"
We'll see from a show of hands on the young folks. Does anybody know the name Dave Gavitt? Okay. All right, good. That's Rhode Islander was his hand right away. So I was family friends with the Gavitts. At a young age, I saw someone who was, and I was at their house all the time, someone who was a basketball coach, an athletic director, a conference commissioner, an Olympic coach, and then the CEO of the Boston Celtics. So at an age when you really thought that the way that you stayed in sports was to continue to play, at age 14, I saw that you could actually stay in this field for your whole life if you wanted to. I didn't know how at the time, but I knew I wanted to, and that set me on a path to want to stay in this field.
Do you notice more students asking how they follow in your footsteps?
We get some. We get some, not a ton, but it is interesting. The athletic directors at Harvard, Penn, and Stanford are all Brown graduates. So we do get some athletes that recognize that and then do ask those questions.
So how about you, Thor? Is there one athletic director in Rhode Island proud enough and confident enough to admit that he cries?
Oh yeah, I'm that guy.
And so when did you decide to go into college sports administration?
I was fortunate enough to be working here. I built my career at the University of Massachusetts and worked for some really amazing people. Starting with Frank McInerney, who gave me my start as coming off an internship at UConn, and then Bob Markham, who I believe may be in the Hall of Fame, who was just a wonderful man for me in terms of giving me different opportunities. And then it was when I left UMass and came back in 2003 when Ian McCall was the athletic director here, and he left after about 3 months. And I was fortunate enough to be named the interim athletic director. It was at that time that I knew, probably about 3 months into that experience, that I said, this is what I want to do. And I really, really, I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes. But I knew that it was something that this is what I could be really passionate about and really want to do for the rest of my life.
So Dr. Kelly, your personal style, what led you to decide to go into college sports administration?
So my style is just one, to not be a micromanager, because if I have to micromanage you, I don't need you. That's my philosophy. But I'm a happy-go-lucky person. I want people that are passionate about the jobs that they're doing, and I'm a passionate person. Similar to Jack, where I walk around and I say hi, and I've been told in my 3 months at Durham, I've done more doing that than a lot of other people did prior to me being there. I think it's about getting to know the person. So anytime I have one-on-ones with my coaches, we talk about the basic things, but I always ask, how's Jack? And they kind of look at me, well, what do you mean? I said, tell me, how are you doing as an individual? Not necessarily you as the coach, but how are you doing? So I care about people more so, obviously I care about wins and those types of things, because winning makes people happy, but I do care about the people in general. So that's me.
And when did you make the decision to go to
Ooh,
college
wow.
sports administration?
My freshman year in college, believe it or not. I kept going back and forth between being a communication arts major and a sport management major. Couldn't figure it out, actually ended up finishing with 2 degrees and one in each discipline. But being at historically black college, resources are limited. So I was able to immerse myself into the greater athletic community. I was doing stats, I was doing expense reports for basketball, I mean, you name it, I was getting that experience, and I realized I could do this and not get paid. I graduated and still worked a year for free for the athletics program, and I said, I was one of those people who said in 5 years I was gonna be an AD. It took me 16. So don't give up. For those of you who, you make it, if you get 7 no's, continue to keep going until you get that yes. And that's just my little spill to the students out there who may get a little bit discouraged. Continue working at it, network with people. No student should leave this room without talking to one of the 4 of us up here, at least these 3, since they're in sitting athletic director roles. Get their names, find out how you can volunteer and assist in their programs. That's how people hire people. They don't hire resumes. Just a thought to put out there.
So before we get to Mr. Bamford, if it's okay with the panelists, we'd be thrilled to take any questions from the audience after Mr. Bamford tells us about his personal style and how he made the decision to be a college sports administration. So if you want to ask any questions, is that okay with the panel?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Mr. Bamford, you want to tell us?
Yeah, so I, kind of playing off the last comment that Dr. Kelly made, it's about people. I try to create an environment where people have a chance to be successful. I've found that in organizations, some organizations that I've been in, sometimes it gets so rigid. You get into your own lane and it's very threatening to get out of your lane. I try to create opportunities for people to help us move forward. And if they can do their job that's on paper that we hired them for, ultimately we're hiring a good fit, somebody that's passionate about what we do. But if they can add value to some other area of the organization, that's a huge advantage for us. And I try to surround myself with people that are going to challenge me, that are going to challenge our organization, and that want to be great, that want to that have a competitive mindset, that want to get better themselves. That's important to me. My start in college athletics, I was very fortunate. My father and mother both worked in higher education. My dad was a director of athletics at the Division III institution, so I grew up around it. I watched my dad have a career that I've said this to many people in our organization. This is not a job. It's not even a career. It's a lifestyle. And his lifestyle meant that I was around the student athletes as much as he was, because I was going to practice and I was going to games, and I felt like I was part of that fabric. And I was like, man, this is exactly what I want to do. This is where I saw the value and how much those young people meant to him, and how he wanted to shape their experience. That was really profound for me. And I didn't have the patience to be a coach. I didn't know that I could chase around 16 and 17-year-old students and try to get them to the institution. I thought I might be able to provide a little bit more as an administrator. And I've been fortunate that I've had some great mentors in my career that have afforded me the opportunity to grow. And we're trying to do the same thing with the folks that we have here at the University of Massachusetts as well.
Thank you. Now, before we take questions, I just want to say we are fortunate that Bamford did become an athletic director, because without his hard work and his staff, this would not have taken place today. So I do want to thank you. Are there any questions from the audience for the panelists?
As an athletic director, you obviously represent the entire athletic department. But you do work at an academic university. So how do you use athletics to support the academic mission of the university? How do you find that balance?
Yes, Mr. Hayes.
I'll go first, Patrick, okay? We live about 2 minutes apart. 2 minutes away from each other. I think one thing you need to do is you've got to build credibility on campus. And how you build credibility, because there's a lot of folks on campus that don't really know what we do. And so how do you do that? Part of it, a large part of it, is getting out of your office and out of the athletic world and knowing what else is taking place on campus and meeting as many people from other departments on campus. It pays huge dividends. And it's not something we do for some ulterior motive. We do it because it's important to understand, if you want to know where athletics fits in on at the institution. You need to know more about what goes on at the institution, and you need to know more people that work outside of the department. And the more that you do that, I find that you build much greater credibility for the athletics department as a whole, and what the athletic mission is. As we know, our athletic mission, and it may vary slightly from institution to institution, but we want to have an athletic program that complements what students do academically. And in order to do that, in order to really do that, you need to know what else takes place on campus.
I think he said it perfectly. You know, one of the things here that we've tried to do, my first month, I think I was in a Chancellor's Leadership Cabinet meeting, and I grabbed the provost after that meeting, and I said, what can athletics do for you? I thought the provost was going to faint. They said, well, nobody in athletics has ever asked what they can do for us. And I said, well, what kind of relationship do we have? How can we make that better? Because, I mean, we're ultimately, relying on how good we are academically in order to recruit the best and brightest students to this university and have them compete for athletics programs. It's such an integral part of what we do. And ultimately for us, we tell our young people in athletics that we look at your experience as one that's co-curricular. It's not extracurricular. It is part of what makes you a good student and will make you successful ultimately. And spreading that narrative across your campus is vitally important. It's been one of the biggest things that we've had to do here is to say, this is what our athletics program can do, not only for our university, but this is what our student athletes are going to do as well. And they're going to be great community members when they leave here, how important their athletic experience is to this community and beyond.
Does anybody else want to ask that into that, Dr. Kelly?
I was just going to say ditto to both what Jack and Ryan said. I mean, at Dartmouth, again, it's an academic institution, highly selective, so you understand academics comes first. We're lucky to be in a league that has an entire handbook, an entire manual on top of the NCAA manual, where there are travel limitations, there are squad limitations, there are all these different things to ensure that our student athletes are students first, and that they are successful in their academics. So in that regard, we're blessed. I think Jack and I are definitely blessed to have the Ivy League there to be there. But then also you have to be able to tell your story. I think Thor talked about when he was giving that presentation to was it the faculty senate, I believe you said? And just talking about the number of majors in the department and being able to tell that story. What are some of your student athletes doing? How are they successful? What type of internships or jobs or careers or whatever it is that they have? We have to tell our story. And I think people fail to realize that athletics, like Ryan said, is co-curricular, and we are ambassadors for the institution as a whole. We are absolutely students first, with a student first mentality. We just happen to compete and be very successful in athletics as well. So I think once you keep all of that in perspective, it's really not hard at all.
Now, University of Massachusetts is indeed fortunate to have Mr. Bamford, because an article in Forbes did report of a study that showed that the athletic department of a school can enhance its academic reputation by roughly 20%. And as Dr. Wallace Lowe, the president of the University of Maryland, says, the athletic department is the front porch of the university. It brands it for the world. Any other questions from anyone? Thank everyone for coming today. This is Jonathan Yates. Oh, I'm sorry, one more?
Sorry about that. I was kind of late on that one. So you just mentioned that athletics is the front porch of the university. With that is a lot of the external aspects of being an athletic director in the marketing, the sponsorship, and the donor relations. There's a lot of internal aspects with competition management. How do you, and others beyond that, how do you find that balance between the external aspects of an athletic department and the internal aspects?
Or do you want to handle this one?
I'll take it. Yeah, sure. I think you have to look at the big picture of everything that we do. And, you have great staffs that are responsible for those various areas, but then it's our jobs to pull them all together. And Ryan said this before, making sure people can get outside their comfort zones and overlap with each other. I'm assuming that the other institutions represented here could always use more staff and more people to help push our agendas forward. But we don't always have that. So, how do you then cross-fit and have people wear multiple hats? That's really, really important. I'm not sure if this was part of your question, if it was going off of the previous question, but I think, our what we do and our image and our brand and the way we carry ourselves within athletics does have a higher profile in a lot of ways than other amazing parts of our campuses do. So it's our obligation to make sure that we handle that responsibility in a first-class way, so that when we go out and represent the university, in our case, the University of Rhode Island, we are doing that in a way that makes the rest of the university proud. And I think it's critically important. Equally as important is the way we interact with other folks on campus, so that we show appreciation to dining, we show appreciation to the academic side of the house. It's really important, and it's in our best interest that programs at the size of the University of Rhode Island, that we are not on an island, and that we are truly, I like the word co-curricular, I think we're truly integral in terms of integrated in terms of the overall university's culture. It's so important.
I could just add one thing. I think those internal and external components are so intertwined in what they do. And when I kind of came up a little bit more on the internal side early in my career, and I used to joke with our development office at Yale, I would say, you go raise the money and we'll figure out a way to spend it. And I thought that was a pretty good equation. And then,
knew what you were good at.
yeah, and then I had to, I became a little bit more affiliated with the external side later in my career, and obviously as an AD. And I would just say, no matter where your focus is, and as an AD, your focus has to be in both places. But I learned this from a mentor of mine, Tom Beckett at Yale. He said, Ryan, you worry about today, and you worry about what our program's doing today. I'll worry about tomorrow, and I'll worry about getting us prepared for tomorrow if you take care of today. And I think that was a pretty good mindset. Tom was really good at that. And one of the things that I've learned just in people that want to invest in your program, whether they're season ticket holders or donors, they want you to be a good steward of your resources, whether they're state resources or student fee resources or money that they give you as a donor. You got to be good stewards of those resources so that they continue that investment. You have to be transparent, and you have to have a plan and say, this is the plan, this is how we executed it, this is where your money, our money was spent. And John Curry did that at Kansas State and at Tennessee. He created every year, he would create a card that he would give out to anybody in his organization or outside his organization that had everywhere they raised money and every revenue and every expenditure. And he was transparent. What did that do? It made people believe that's something I want to invest in because I know exactly what they're doing with my money.
He also did his weekly Dear John letter too at University of Tennessee.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and to make sure that when you raise the money or have the revenues coming in, that you spend it in a really responsible way, and that you're transparent about how that's happening, and that creates a level of investment that can really allow you to have some gains.
Yeah, on the internal, external, clearly there are responsibilities that fall under one or the other of those areas. But as you go through this business on a daily basis, they really do cross over. And so we would make sure that when I was at the University of Connecticut, we were all educated on this, that the ticket office is an internal operation. When a donor comes to the window for the men's basketball game against Georgetown and brought his women's tickets against Georgetown by mistake, the ticket office is about to enter into the fundraising business, whether they know this or not. And so everyone was trained to understand that everyone was a fundraiser. And yes, it was a fundraising responsibility, and everyone had a compliance responsibility. Now, the compliance side we would consider internal, and the fundraising external. But that was one thing that was communicated to all of us on the staff, was that everybody was a fundraiser and everybody was a compliance person. So you can see where the internal and the external responsibilities really can cross over easily and do on a daily basis.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
This question specifically for Mr. Bamford. So UMass athletics is kind of going through a revolution right now of growing into kind of a national powerhouse, getting more name recognition. How do you kind of stay ahead of that and make sure that UMass keeps growing and keeps becoming more powerful as an athletic program?
I'm going to hire you as a marketer. I love that. That was good. I didn't even pay him for that question. You know what? I think anytime you get a chance to, after last year, we had 6 titles, and I referenced that earlier. That was the most we've had since 2008, 2009. And one of the things that we did in our annual report that's gone out to people who have invested in our program is we've called that Massachusetts Momentum. And ultimately, it's my goal to keep that momentum going. It's my charge to do that. I just want people who feel good about our program and want to be part of it. Learned a long time ago, it takes a village to be successful, in college athletics especially. You have to have the campus community, the academic components, the research component. You have to have them. You have to have the external constituents on your side. And look, we have challenges every day. Every day we look at ourselves and say, how do we get better? And you know what? We make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, and that's how you learn from them, and you grow through adversity and things like that. But I'm very proud of the staff that I've got collected around me. They honestly make my job very easy. I have a great staff. And the staff, had nothing to do with this event today. He asked if we could host it at the University of Massachusetts. I said absolutely. And then my staff took care of everything, and they're
They did a great job.
they're to take all the credit. They were phenomenal. But I like to surround myself with people that I like to be in the trenches with, and that includes students, not just our staff. And it's been fun, and I think we're making progress, and we just continue to try to chip away at that every day and make life better for our young people. Ultimately, that's what it's all about. And I think we're getting there. But until, I said this a long time ago, until you win them all, you feel like you have it. And even then, you're like, how do I do it again? Look at Nick Saban, right? He wins the national championship, and the next day he's like, where am I going recruiting? And he doesn't enjoy it. That's the business we live in. But it's been fun, and this is a special university, and special because of students that, we have a great sport management program, and I'm so fortunate that so many of you work in our athletic department, that you're here. It means you're investing in yourself. You're investing in your career. Dr. Kelly mentioned that. That's really impressive. I'm impressed every day, not only with our student athletes, but our students, and I just appreciate you all being here as well. So thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I hear a lot, like today's student athletes are tomorrow's alumni, and I think that's really important for an athletic department because a lot of research has come out about, the student athlete experience is really what gets that buy-in 10 years down the line and really gets them a part of not only the athletic department, but the community that the institution is in. And particularly for Thor, who's coming from a higher education background, what does that look like in your athletic departments as far as professional development, career development, the holistic experience for the student athletes now to prepare them for their future, and not only getting their buy-in now, but also getting their buy-in in the future?
That's a great question, and thank you for asking it. When I think about our student athletes, we have to look out 10, 15 years. What are they doing? And what did we do as a university, as an athletic department to help prepare them to that level of success? And so I think, we focus so much on, I don't want to use the cliche buzzword life skills, but, what does that mean? Career development, huge, bringing back alums to integrate their experiences back in with our current student athletes. We're very lucky at a place like Rhode Island because it is a small state, and there is incredible affinity for URI students and student athletes. And so we're really able to make some phone calls. Hey, and we also are, I think, the University of Rhode Island is the State University of New Jersey, so we do have so many people that are working down in that area too. So, what can we do to put people in touch with alums, help get them careers? Never mind the work we're doing daily, mental health, nutrition, all that stuff. That's to try to make sure that their 3 and 4 and 5 years are good experiences while they're here. But as importantly, I would say in a lot of ways, more importantly for the masses, what are we doing to prepare them for successful careers? And the good news about that is it's measurable, and we hear back from our alums based on their successes and so forth, and then we need to celebrate that. You just made me think of something that I don't think we've done a good job with, not just because we hadn't thought about it, and that's how can we go out and sort of show some profiles and highlight some successes of those student athletes, because there's some, now this being my 12th year, I go back and see people that were freshmen or seniors when I was my first year at Rhode Island are now 34, 35 years old. Oh my gosh. But they're doing some great things, so what are we going to go out and how can we go out and showcase what they're doing? And I'm glad you asked that question because I had not thought about that until right now.
And then they also handle that too from teaching at Iowa in the Department of Recreation and Sports Management. Recent interview I had this week with a sports psychologist and an athletic director. It's pretty much been, decided that we're on the fourth wave now of athletic directors. The first athletic director is, sort of what you think, the football coach or the basketball coach. He retired and becomes the athletic director. The next wave, a lot of them you see now, they love sports, they play, they thought about coaching, like the Debbie Yow's and Judy Rose's. They realized, as Judy Rose said, who was the athletic director at UNCC, I didn't want my future decided by an 18-year-old having to hit a free throw at the end of the game. So those who love sports and played and coached, they went into college sports administration to do that. Now, I think you're seeing the third wave. Those who did not play, they weren't good enough to be D1 athletes, but they love sports so much, they're recreation and management majors at Iowa, sports management majors at UMass, and are the professionals coming up. That's the third wave, and I think the fourth wave is going to be very unique. You're starting to see it now. For example, Jack Swarbrick, the athletic director at Notre Dame, he was a corporate lawyer at Baker Danielson, a big Indianapolis law firm. John Wildhack, the athletic director at Syracuse University, he was very high up with ESPN. And the question I asked in my interview with the sports psychologist and Patricia Thomas, the athletic director at UDC, do you think you could see a day where sports psychologists might be an athletic director? Because schools are focusing more and more on mental health aspects of athletics and sports administration. So I think it's a wonderful industry that's evolving and opening up for everyone. Any more questions right now? Well, I hate to end it with a disagreement, but Ryan Bamford was wrong. He was very helpful in making this happen today. So other than that, I want to thank everyone for joining us, and I will get this out and hope you guys can see it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.